So, Barbara, you're a divorce coach. You're
I
from
am.
America, but you're based in France. Can
Yep,
you explain
absolutely.
to us what a divorce coach is?
Sure. A divorce coach is a guide. It's someone who helps guide you through the divorce process, whether it's at the beginning or during or even after the divorce is finalized. So we provide emotional support, but more importantly, we help you to think clearly. So our sessions are a space where it's calm, non-judgmental. We help you think through every issue that you're facing, and take a 360-degree look at what's going on so that you can determine what the best option is for you and how to proceed. Yeah, how to proceed and act in your best long-term interest.
And what are some of the main what are some of the main problems that people have when they come to a divorce coach? And if there are any that particularly involve the financial side?
Yeah, there are a lot of different problems. Everybody has different problems when you come to a divorce coach. Every marriage is different, every divorce is different. In most divorces, disputes are usually either over money or division of property, or children. So money disputes can run the gamut. Should you pay alimony? Should you receive alimony? Are you entitled to it? How much? It could be questions of is someone hiding assets? There's the question of what constitutes a marital asset. In France, in particular, we're all under a certain marriage contract, a marital regime. And so, how property is divided is dependent on what kind of marital regime you're under. So, that can be something that is surprising for a foreigner who is getting divorced here, especially if they're divorcing a French person. They weren't really sure what marital regime they were under because maybe they signed their divorce contract, or excuse me, their marital contract years ago, and they never really thought about what it would mean in terms of divorce. So issues such as that can come up. So a lot of different financial issues are at stake.
But you say on your website that even if a marriage has been acrimonious, it doesn't mean that the divorce necessarily has to be, that you can find a calmer solution, right?
Yeah, yeah, that happens. I mean, I think when people hear the word amicable divorce, they think, oh, well, my ex and I are fighting all the time. We're not amicable. We're not friendly. There's no way we can have an amicable divorce. But that's not what an amicable divorce really means. What it really means is that you are able to communicate just enough in order to reach agreement on certain topics. So, for example, if you're stuck over your parenting plan or how to divide certain assets, you can come together either one on one or through your lawyers or through a mediator and reach a solution that works for you. And it's really, if you can have an amicable divorce, meaning you're not involving the court is not making any decisions on your behalf. It would save a lot of money, it would save a lot of time and a lot of emotional distress.
Mm.
So if that is a possibility for you, then I would recommend at least trying it before saying, oh, it's not going to work. Now, in cases of abuse, or whether physical or emotional, coercive control, that is probably not the best option. But in most other cases, there are ways to find agreement without involving the court. Because the court might decide something that neither one of you actually want, and then you're stuck.
Then you're forced.
Yeah.
Do you think women realize the financial impact when they're going to get divorced? Because there was a survey in the UK by Legal and General which found that a year after a divorce, the a woman's household income has dropped by 41%, whereas a man's has only dropped by 21%. And we've seen similar figures in France where women tend to be hit harder by a divorce than men.
For
Do you think they
sure.
realize when they're getting into it that it's going to be that painful financially?
I don't know if we can generalize and say all women feel this way or that way or
Mm.
what they believe. I think that women should be aware, certainly, that this is an issue. I think in the media and in movies or just yeah, in society you always hear, oh yeah, and she got half and she wiped him out and all these other kind of things, and that gives this impression that women are actually doing better than men when it comes to divorce, and it's not the case at all. So
Mm.
women do need to be aware of what the risks are when you're getting divorced, or what the, I wouldn't say just the risk, but the weak points are. You know, women have most are more often out of the workforce because they stopped to raise their children, or they were working part-time, or they went on a different track, an employment track, so that they are
Yeah.
not making as much money as the male counterparts of the same age. So that puts women at a distinct disadvantage. So when women go into divorce, they really need to be prepared, in that they need to kind of know what their marital financial situation is, and they need to have an idea about how they're going to go forward in the future. So, for example, like I recommend to my clients to do kind of three budgets at the outset. So you would do one, what is your budget for the divorce? Because you have to know how you're going to pay for your divorce and how much you're thinking you're going to spend for the divorce. You have to have an idea about that. The second budget is figuring out what your current marital lifestyle is, and going through those numbers so you know, how much am I spending right now to have this particular lifestyle. And then you have to project into the future and say, okay, post divorce, what is it going to look like for me? And you need to come up with a realistic budget for that. And pretty much everyone takes a hit in divorce, but because women in particular take a bigger hit, they really need to figure this out beforehand, to the extent possible.
Yeah, I was actually speaking to someone the other day who said that after her divorce, she wanted to keep the family home, which obviously a lot of women do. They want to keep their kids in the same stable family environment. But it meant that she got ownership of the home, which is kind of a liability because she was then paying a really big mortgage. And her husband got the investment properties. So
Mm-hmm.
he got properties with an income that were generating an income, and she got something which was taking up about 50% of her average monthly income just on her
Exactly.
home. And then she couldn't afford basic things like going on
Yeah.
holiday.
Yeah, exactly. Those are exactly the sort of calculations you need to do in advance. And this is also where a coach comes in, because if a client would say that to me, we would crunch the numbers. We would look at the reality of it and say, listen, okay, this is taking up how much of your disposable income to keep this house? I know, and there's a lot of emotion, but we have to think with our heads and not our hearts in order to move forward in divorce. So yeah, we would do that analysis, and also thinking about the upkeep of the house and the fact that the husband has the investments. Well, that puts him way ahead, and that's really something to consider.
There's a lot of women who are earning more now, and in some cases, earning more than their husbands.
Mhm.
Do you think that has influenced the number of people getting divorced? I think you mentioned that there's been an increase recently in the number of women over 50 who are getting divorced.
Exactly. Yeah, there is a trend of what's called gray divorces. I think in the UK they're called silver surfers or something like that. But um, yes, since like 1990, the number of couples over 50 have just exploded, and getting divorced have exploded, and it's primarily initiated by women. So, there are a lot of reasons for this trend. I think one of the biggest ones is that women are now earning their own income and able to think about, they have that flexibility to be able to leave if they want to. But also there's less societal pressure. There's less societal pressure to stay in a marriage where you feel unhappy. And a lot of women are kind of recognizing that they feel unhappy or they feel alone. And, the kids are out of the house once you're, over 50, 55, that age. And women are saying, you know what? I don't want to spend my next 20, 30 years feeling so alone. I can do better. I can do better on my own. And so I think that is the impetus of this trend. And it's occurring, by the way, all over the world. It's in France, it's in the US, UK, everywhere, Australia, everywhere. Gray divorce is rising.
In cases where the women are earning more than their husbands, in the past, we've heard a lot of stories about men hiding their assets so that the wife couldn't get hold of them and putting them in their parents' name and stuff like that. Do you think that with the number of more women having more wealth and higher incomes, that could encourage the opposite situation where we've got women hiding their assets?
Yeah, it could be. It could be. I hope not, because it's illegal. And once you do that, if a court finds out, even after the divorce, the court can step in and readjust your divorce terms, and you can get in a lot of trouble. And that can even affect custody. It can affect, the distribution of assets and everything. So that is not a trend to emulate.
Yeah, because you said that in the US, it's called discovery when you're supposed to, but they don't have discovery in France, but it's still illegal here, right?
It's still illegal. In France, you have a period where you are supposed to disclose your financial information. So, and in the UK as well. Although they don't have the specific discovery period here in France, you do have to disclose your financial information. And if you don't, you can get in trouble. Now, I want to make the distinction, though, setting aside money. If you see yourself getting, I'm on the path for divorce, I better start saving money for this. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. However, when it comes time to disclose your income, you need to also disclose that income. But you can still set it aside. That's not a problem.
And you also have to disclose any investments or assets.
You do.
And which includes a savings account.
Yes.
So if you put aside money for the divorce, couldn't he still get part of it?
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely.
Unless you put it on the mattress, right?
No, but I mean, but I cannot, wearing a lawyer hat, I cannot recommend that. It is definitely illegal, and this is one of these actions that can come back to really haunt you. It's better to come up with a creative, smart solution for your financial issues rather than trying to hide assets.
And plan in advance, so you're not
plan absolutely and plan in advance. I mean, because there is a lot of flexibility if you're able to work with your spouse, your ex-spouse or soon to be ex. You have a fair amount of flexibility. You guys can decide between you what you think is fair, and if you have sort of a rational discussion about it and you have a rationale, you're able to articulate why, and not just you're wanting to punish someone, or or you're driven by emotion. That those aren't usually the best reasons. But if you have a reason that ties in, that aligns to your long-term interest and is going to make you better off in the long term, then perhaps there's something that you can negotiate. So I would go for negotiation rather than doing something like hiding assets, which could just come back to bite you in the butt.
Yeah, and I think the fact that women live longer, they often take breaks for children, as you mentioned, they're going to need bigger pension assets. So they could come up with an argument to argue why they need a certain amount of money. both immediately post-divorce and particularly if they're taking care of the children.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it shouldn't be 50-50, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, so you can, I would recommend to talk to a financial advisor, to someone expert in money, to tell you, because there's so many implications with money, right? Just in the example you gave, you have someone with a house and you have someone with investment assets. You've got property tax going on one hand, you've got capital gain taxes on the other. You have to really do the math to make sure that it's evening out in the right way and in the right time frame. Where it's like X now, your children are at home right now, so you want them to be in this house near the school. Where are you going to be 15 years from now when, one child has decided to live in China and the other one is living in the US, and you're stuck with a house that's falling down and you can't afford the maintenance. You need to be thinking far, far ahead.
Yeah.
When you're making these terms.
Cool. Are there any other things that you think women need to think about and that they don't maybe think about, especially with expats coming to France and maybe not understanding the system?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course, getting divorced in France raises so many different issues because, as I said, you have the marital regime that plays such a big role in divorce. If you have children, you have the Hague Convention and international child custody laws. So it's not so easy to just say, oh, I'm going to return home with my kids, even if that's where your support is, even if that's where you have a better chance of making money. It's much harder to do so if your soon-to-be ex opposes this move. So you really need to think carefully about how you approach this. You certainly don't want to just up and go with your child, because that would be kidnapping. Immigration status, that is also an issue when you're getting divorced, if depending on how long you've lived here. So yeah, there's a lot of things to think about. And what I would recommend to women really is, before you run to a lawyer, you need to take the time to think about, and it's really hard, I'll say this, it's really hard. Divorce is just one of the most stressful, most emotional things you can go through, even if you know it's the right thing for you. But think about what your priorities are. What do you really, really want to happen? And what are things that you can give up on? Because that will give you sort of a benchmark when you start talking to your lawyer of how you want to proceed. You can say, it's really, really important to me that I have my immigration status, or that, I keep the family home, or we sell it and we split. Whatever it is, it's important to have these ideas before you go to the lawyer. And then the lawyer can tell you, within the legal framework, what you can do, what is possible for you, and how to approach it. And then you can devise a legal strategy.
Is that because French lawyers maybe look at things in a slightly different way than people from other countries?
I would recommend it for no matter where you are.
Okay.
No matter where you are, because your lawyer deals with the law. A lot of people think that they use their lawyer sort of a little bit as a therapist, a little bit as a coach, but the lawyer is really there to deal with the law. You need to know what is right for you. And it's really hard to figure out sometimes, but it will help you be more efficient with your lawyer, because if you're sitting there in their office going, I don't know, and the clock is ticking and money is going out the window, that does not serve you. So you really need to try your best to get your ducks in a row. And then when you approach your lawyer, you go with a list of very targeted questions, so that they know how to focus, and you yourself are focused. And that will just help you throughout the entire divorce journey, because no matter what your spouse throws at you, or your ex-spouse throws at you, if you can stay focused on what you know you need and what you know that you want, and you know it's for a good reason, and it's not just an emotional reason, and it's in your long-term interest, then that helps you to feel content with the way you're proceeding in the divorce, and it won't tear you apart afterwards, because a lot of people come out of divorce just destroyed by the process. So you want to avoid that as well if possible.
All right. On that note,
Look, I mean, you can have more control over how you move through the divorce than you think. Okay. And again, that's part of a coach's job. Like, divorce is a legal process, but is just as much an emotional process. And the lawyer handles the legal side. The coach helps you with the emotional side to make sure, or not to make sure, but to help you see where your decisions are being emotionally led instead of rationally led. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, thanks a lot, Barbara. It was lovely speaking to you.
Very nice speaking with you also. Thank you.
And I'll put in the description where people can get in contact with you.
Absolutely. That's great. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.